Chad Hawks, aka the Crypt Kicker. I have known you for like 18 years or something ridiculous like that, and yet this is the first
Wow.
time I've ever had you as a guest on my show. Now, I didn't have a show 18 years ago, but that's
It's
no
true.
excuse, damn it. You're
But
here, and we're going to talk about a wonderful classic movie that's turning 40 years old this year. And we're going to talk about something very cool that you are involved in. You are a producer of a Kickstarter campaign for a book of creepy, funny poetry called Poems of Grave Importance by Ridley Mortis, which is it's got a couple weeks left on Kickstarter, so we'll get into that. But how the hell are you, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you. It's great to see you again. And thank you for having me on your show. And 18 years, I think that's just good fermentation time. And you get all of the credit because I wouldn't be here now if it weren't for you.
In the attic
Because
is what you're saying.
exactly, right? In the creepy attic, surrounded by horrifying old baby dolls hiding in crawl spaces. Um, no, I wouldn't be into horror to the level that I am, nor I think would I be calling myself a horror producer if how many years ago was this? About 12, no, 13 or 14 years ago, when I said, I think I want to make a horror and Halloween website. You said, well, do you like horror? Do you watch horror movies? Um, because my focus really was kind of Halloween and just dark arts. And you said, well, maybe we should go to a horror convention. And I thought, oh God, it's just going to be people covered in blood and they're going to be trying to scare me and stab me the whole time. And this is really what I thought. And then we went there. We went to, I don't remember what the first one we went to was, if it was in
Was it
Chicago or if it
was it
was up north.
Flashback or yeah, it might have been
Yeah,
Flashback.
I think it might have been Flashback. Maybe Ginger Snap.
Oh
When they
yeah,
were there.
yeah, Emily Perkins and Catherine Isabel, I think.
Yeah, that. Oh no, no, no! I think that might have been a subsequent one because now that I'm thinking of it, I think maybe it was the Phantasm cast. No, that's not right. Anyway,
Too many to count. There
yes.
was we went on a tear there for a few years.
Oh yeah, like 3 or 4 years, we were going to every one in the greater North Midwest area, and it was fantastic. And these people, nobody ever tried to stab me, not once. Um, in fact, like quite the opposite. It's mostly hugs and just so many cool people. So thank you for that because that was definitely a fork in the road of my life, and you kind of gently suggested like, well, if you're gonna do this, maybe you should experience it. And so that does mean that I've had a lot of catching up to do. And Slumber Party Massacre is a recent watch since we have Brink Stevens and a little bit of surprise I'll tell you about later involved on this project to some extent. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll get into that the whole Kickstarter project. There's a link down below for those who are watching the video or listening to the audio podcast. I'll just kind of briefly right now. The goal is $6,500, and as of this recording, so it might be past it by the time this goes up. It's 6104, so you're just about there. And I backed this sucker today because I'm
You did.
very excited about it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, we'll get into the whole thing, but we are here to talk about Slumber Party Massacre, a film I had never seen until this morning. And it's a huge blind spot for me. And I'll just start off by saying I avoided this movie for, decades because I would see the kind of the poster art, the VHS art, and it was the classic shot of like these 3 or 4 girls kind of framed between this guy's leg and the drill hanging down, and they're all like in their 90s and looking scared. I'm like, this looks like cheesy 80s, kind of exploitive. It just didn't seem like anything new or interesting. And boy, was I wrong, because it is exploitive, but it's also one of the best slasher movies I think I've ever seen. Where was this movie all my life? Where was I for the entire life of this movie? I'm not bearing the lead. I love this film. Let me ask you, Chad, what do you think of Slumber Party Massacre, the original from 1982, I should say?
Definitely. I found it fascinating right from the start. And this is something that as as I have had to go back and watch horror, catch up on all of these horror films, um, I just wonder what it would have been like to watch what is now an anachronism. But if you're watching it in the day, if you're sitting in the theater in 1982, I would have been 12, 13-ish. You know, what would my experience have been then? Now, it was really enjoyable. It's a fascinating piece of horror history in that I think in a lot of ways this was meant to be um a women get it done better film where you've got most of the males are either just way they're thinking like teenagers do, it's just all libido or let's go scare the girls type nonsense, or they're super freaking creepy. And you know even the people, and this is a horrible statement but it's true, so often the people that you're looking to rely upon can't be trusted. And I think the director of this film, um she had a lot to say, and I think she said a lot. And Amy Holden Jones, she's fascinating in her own way. um she was working on horror films and films in general long before she wrote, produced, and directed this piece, and this was her first film.
It's
And
incredible.
yeah, and while it's got some very 80s things going on, there's right out of the gate, you just got like, oh, okay, here's our nudity. I guess this is what we signed up for when we went to see, like that box cover you're talking about. You're just not going to escape this. And then there's even more. There's more of an obligatory scene. You've got the locker room shower scene in the girls' locker room, and um,
Almost,
cameras.
yeah, almost everybody in this movie who's a woman gets naked
Right.
in some form or another. And right off the bat, when I went to look up on IMDb, because I think, oh, I know why. I started watching this. There's a free version on YouTube. You know, someone uploaded the movie, and I started watching it because it was free. I'm not proud of it, but sometimes that happens, or it doesn't happen. I just did it. I'm responsible.
That's
But it looked like
free on him.
someone had taken like a drive-in movie print and just uploaded it to YouTube, because it's all like dark and scratchy and everything. And it looked like a cross between Debbie Does Dallas, complete with the whole like, hey, we're high school athletes, but we all look 25, and we're going and showering and everything. And you got the horny boys. It looked like a cross between that and the Thanksgiving segment that Eli Roth did for Grindhouse a few years ago. But finally, I can't remember. I was checking something on IMDb because I was like, who made this movie? And then I noticed on IMDb, it was like there's a link like you can watch this free versus like on Freevee, I think is like their new
Yeah.
streaming service. You got to watch some commercials with it, but it's a beautiful, pristine like digital transfer. It's night and day. So I watched the rest of it on that. Um,
But you
and
got the whole drive-in experience for the first half. That's kind of cool.
I might go back and watch the drive-in version later now that I actually know what I'm seeing, but it was hard to like, and not that I'm perving out like, oh, I didn't get a good look at what I wanted to see. It's just like everything was dark.
Oh,
Yeah, so it was no good. But Amy Holden Jones, that's what stood out to me. I'm like, okay, this is a horror movie in the early 80s directed by a woman, and it was co-written by her and another woman named Rita Mae Brown. Now, I'm not familiar with these lady's other work, but I'm fascinated by this because, especially in the culture today, it's like the last 5 to 10 years, people seem to there's an emphasis on female filmmakers. I have no problem with that, but there's almost like a memory holding of the fact that there were women pioneers before oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on her name. He directed The Hurt Locker. Help me out with this.
I have screens open just for this.
No, I'm totally blanking out. It's partially my head cold.
Catherine Bigelow.
Catherine Bigelow. Yeah, I just talked about Near Dark a few weeks ago. I'm so sorry. But no, but there's like this whole idea that Catherine Bigelow, although she did win the Oscar and she blazed a trail, there were people working in film and making kind of important films before that, and I feel like that kind of gets lost somehow, and especially when it comes to genre. There's a whole idea of the male gaze, and yet here we have a film that is as male gazy as you can possibly get, but it was written and directed by female filmmakers. So it just kind of it makes me question the question, like, is it all just perverts? Were they just writing to the people they thought were going to come to see the movie? Is it what they wanted to see? Are they turning the entire genre upside down on its head, which I think is more to the point, because there's like a Playgirl magazine with Sylvester Stallone on the cover that shows up. So it kind of made me want to see more female pioneered slasher movies, not in a modern sense, but to go back and find a treasure trove of people who were doing it back when the genre was at the height of its powers.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Like you said, there's a lot of tropes that are, this is 82, so they weren't tropes necessarily then, but there are things like you said. Did they assume, like, well, this is going to put butts in seats and we need to play to that? But on some of these things, there does seem to be a bit of a morality play where uh the creepiest character in the whole film winds up getting taken out. And even though you have the young couple sneaking off to not really sneaking, to actually openly say, hey, we're gonna leave the party, and
They're gonna go out to get beer. That was the cover
right,
story. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And everybody just knows what they're talking about, but they're taken out early. And you know that's the common moral, is you don't have sex as a teen or you're gonna get killed. But was there a message there deeper, or are we just looking at it again, at this film out of time, having both seen it within the last I think I saw it years ago, but I didn't remember much. And rewatching it within the last couple of months, it's been, um, you can't help but have the weight of everything going on in the world not be present when you're watching something like that and wonder. So, but I think there are some things that work really well in it. It's just fun all around, but all of the feints, particularly the coach, gets a lot of things set up to be jump scares that didn't have to be there, but they were kind of well done, and I'd say they're really well done, and it keeps you on your feet a little bit, like you know. I'm not sure how much. I'm assuming that people watching, they don't mind
Oh, we'll
spoilers.
talk full spoilers. Go ahead.
Okay,
It's 40 years. If you haven't caught up to it,
right, exactly.
I'm talking to the Ian from yesterday. If you haven't seen this by now, you don't deserve to be non-spoiled.
I mean, I'm upset about Stranger Things 4, so I guess 40 years is a pretty good limit. There's they're just this killer is fascinating to me because it's like they looked around and went, okay, so we could play it up from the mystery angle and you don't know who the killer is, or we could take the mask route and you could have a masked killer, or you could have a supernatural killer, or some combination, or we could just have a dude in really clean, crisp denim and some nice boots.
And a
Just
bright red t-shirt and like really cool, almost like modern looking hair. This was not 80s hair. This is like a man out of time.
right. Yeah, maybe that was his thing. Maybe he was a time traveler. I don't know. But he, I,
He had to murder enough co-eds to fuel his time machine to get back to the year 2005.
it's like, what is he just a disaffected carpenter? Or like there's complexity there that we're not shown. He is super neat. You don't, he's never got blood on him.
Well, he
And
does at the end.
well,
But yeah,
yes.
and not
But
just when he's getting sliced up, but to your point, yeah, early on when he's still more or less in control of the situation, he is very pristine. And we are only like 5 years out from Halloween at this point, 4 or 5 years. John Carpenter's Halloween, a couple years from Friday the 13th. We're getting into knockoff territory. So when you use the word tropes, I feel like there's a bunch of stuff here, and I haven't seen nearly as many slasher movies as I probably should have. But this stuff still feels like it's new. Like this was the kind of movie that people would have stolen from. I mean, the first murder I think we see is these two jockish kind of guys walking through a parking lot. There's a girl with a red bandana, and they pass by the telephone service van that our killer is hiding out in, and the van doors open. She walks past it and gets like swept into the van by our killer. The door shuts, and then he murders her inside. This is exactly the same way that Jamie Kennedy's character got axed in Scream 2, 20 years later. There's a whole bunch of, there's the whole gag of like the one girl later on gets into the car in the garage because she's going to go make out with her boyfriend. And she's like, "Hey, I'm here, honey." And she nudges the shoulder and his head rolls off into her lap. There's all this great stuff that even if I've seen 100 times before, there's such a finesse to this particular filmmaking style that it felt new to me, or it felt like if I had been watching this 40 years ago, I would have been like, my mind is blown. This is really freaking me out.
yeah. And there was Driller Killer in 70, 77, 79 ish
Okay.
there. So I don't know if, just the choice of a drill, and we're not just talking about a convenient hand drill, but a two-handed massive like hauling drill. I'm not sure exactly what they're called, but
It's like a giant, like a foot long or more metal corkscrew looking thing
right.
that's just
They're
mess up
not
your
easy to
day.
wield. So the fact that that's this guy's weapon of choice, like I want I I have not watched the very recent reimagining, I believe they called it, of Slumber Party Massacre. But I did watch 2 and 3 and just kind of made a Slumber Party Massacre night of it. And they take some interesting routes, and they're pretty tight in timing. I think 2 came out in 85 to 87, somewhere in there. And then in 91, the third one comes out. 2 is just kind of a crazy departure where we still have the driller killer, but now he's kind of Freddy Krueger-ish, where he's appearing to her, this the younger sister, in dreams, but then he fully manifests and starts killing kids at a slumber party. But there's rock and roll. He's in all leather, and his drill is now a drill slash guitar. So he's playing the drill guitar, singing, and and slashing. So it's a wacky one. Number
Is
3.
this supposed to be the same characters from the first movie? Or is
Well,
it?
Not the same actors, but I think the best I could tell was the only crossover character or continuation was the younger sister, who's now grown up. Her older sister is in a mental institution. Um, we have a little bit of an inexplicable twist at the end, which I'm not going to give that one away because I just mentioned the guitar drill and a guy all in leather singing and dancing while he's killing. So you really need to do yourself a favor and watch that one. The early '90s one is actually a pretty good take, kind of the same premise, but there is a tie-in with the killer, a stronger tie-in. I don't believe any of the kids have any connection to any of the previous characters, but the killer has a connection to the original killer. So, but yeah, just talking about that killer, I just wish I could have gotten a little bit more of like, what is this guy's MO? What is this psychopathy that he is wandering around calmly and just is between his mannerisms and his clothing, his attire is just so impeccable. Where is this need to drill people, which he doesn't always use as a drill? Drills pretty much are most effective when they go through things. If you're using them like an axe or a sword,
Oh yeah, he gets people
with,
across the throat.
right,
He does use a mean long knife at one point to stab a guy to death. But yeah, our killer's name is Russ Thorne, and we learn early on that he has escaped. He had killed 5 people in 1969, so he'd been locked up for some time. I love this character because aside from at one point, there's an almost comical bit where he opens up the trunk of the car and he's got a whole bunch of bodies in there and he's counting them. He's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he's like, damn it. Like he realizes that I guess the one guy he drilled in the shoulder had escaped or something. So he had to go and sort that whole thing out. Um, but then at the very end of the movie, he gets this sort of monologue, but it's not an expository thing. Like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's just the ramblings of a madman. Like, you're all so pretty and I like pretty girls and I love you and all this other stuff. But he's a complete mystery. This is what makes
yeah,
him, to me, almost. Michael Myers had the good visual with that William Shatner mask, but this guy is like the embodiment of what Michael Myers was supposed to be. Like, if you didn't have Dr. Loomis in the original Halloween explaining everything about him and just had Michael Myers roaming around just being this guy who goes and stalks and kills, people, and you have no idea, that would be this guy from this movie. And I think, I'm not saying it's an improvement necessarily, but I responded much more to it because it seemed more real. Like, this is a nut who got out and he's just going around killing people in the neighborhood.
interesting. It played the opposite with me because just that fear of the unknown. Like Michael Myers comes off as supernatural, like large in life, larger than life, survives almost everything. You never see an expression because of that mask. And therefore, you kind of almost don't question. It's like, oh, this is just an evil entity, not it transcends a human. So therefore, this thing does not have human emotions and no lacks empathy. So to go around killing is what it does, and that's terrifying because there's kind of no way to stop him. In this case, like right there in the van scene you mentioned, where we see the killer for the first time as just a smaller in stature dude in some pretty fancy duds. Um, it's just it was fascinating, but it wasn't scary, and that's where I wish I could go back in time.
Mm.
And if I were 12, 13, sitting in the theater, or when a watered down version hits TV, taking it in, if if my reaction would have been different. But as an adult, I'm like, dude, you're not inhuman. Like, you've got a drill, and I'll take you on.
Ah, well, and that's I wasn't scared in the sense of like, oh, this movie is really terrifying. I was put in the head of the people who were encountering him,
Right.
which is, and I'm not like a big tough guy. I probably would have been like one of those, horny boys, just screaming at the top of my lungs and running away. Um, there was a great line at one point. He's like, "Hey man, we got to do something about these girls." I say we make a run for it. Like, but so, but it's just the idea that it was scarier to me that he was just a person, who lacked all the empathetic, reasoning qualities of a person, and he had this giant drill. Here's a good example. Towards the end, there's two girls who are hiding out in the second room bedroom, and they're just sitting, very close up right at the front of the camera. And the very back, you can see the curtain kind of move, and then you see the our killer make his way sneaking in and getting closer and closer, to the point where you see the POV down, and they look up
That
and they're like
slow
screaming.
turn.
Right. And then he turns on the drill and they're fighting. The thing is, they're fighting in this very small, cramped room. And they've done the whole like horror movie thing where they shove the dresser and the cabinet in front of the door so he can't get in from the other side. They're having to move that out of the way again. But because the space is so cramped, the furniture is knocking into each other and then creating a barrier of its own so they can't get out. And they're trapped. And he's like, he makes short work of one of them. The other girl narrowly escapes. To me, it's that claustrophobia of like, I can imagine myself in that situation with just the psychologically looking at that guy's insane eyes, his large drill, and as you mentioned, his impeccable clothes. I wonder if that's sort of like psychological warfare. Like, I'm gonna freak them the fuck out. They'll be mesmerized by my bright colors like some kind of an insect as I go in for the kill.
Behold my denim before I take you to death. Yes.
First you get the denim, then you
Um,
get the venom. Sorry.
uh, you hit on something there where I think there are a lot of moments where people act, let's call it as was the style, um, in horror movies to make some pretty poor choices in a panicky moment. But there were also a lot of moments where these characters are really smart. Even the first kill, no, the first girl that we see killed, we see the telephone worker. She's pulled into the van and dispatched by the kill. Um, but the first high schooler,
Who I believe was
oh,
Brink Stevens, right?
it was, yeah,
Mhm.
playing Linda. She, the group of kids walks by the van, and we're assuming, the killer looks out at them. They're talking about having the party. We're assuming that's where he makes that connection, like, oh, I'll just follow them to their neighborhood or whatever. But Linda heads back into the gym having forgotten something, and the killer tries to kill her from a surprise attack from behind, only nicks her. She runs off, and then she does something like super smart. She can't get out of this huge gymnasium complex because, as her coach warned her going in, be quick because they're locking up. Well, somebody didn't do a security check before they left. They locked all the doors from the inside with chains, padlocks, etc. She's stuck, and this guy's trying to kill her. She hides, and she hides really well. He's about to give up, and then just about to, leave her where she is. He doesn't know where she is, and then he spots, oh, trail of blood.
And you
But
see her on the other side of the door trying to like mop it up with the towel. She was just about
exactly,
scot free.
yeah, yeah. Had it not been for the blood on the other side, so there are some characters doing some things that, like, oh, that's respectable. It puts me into that character's frame of mind much better than, anytime characters I don't know, say they're walking through the woods, making a home video, trying to find some witch, and they have a map, and then they throw the map in the creek. I'm like, well, these characters are not believable, and I really don't care if they're all killed. So,
But it was a
the,
documentary, Chad. It was all real.
yes, yes, it was. Um, but in this film, some of the characters make not all the time, like I said, there's still those classic moments, but there there are some good choices that are made, and it's like, oh, okay, like the two boys who are like, oh, we should do something. What they think up is we should both run for help instead of staying here as a group. Maybe that's not the smartest decision, but what they decide to do is to split up and both go different directions.
Because the
uh
killer can only chase one, or so they think.
exactly, yeah. And that's where our killer must be. He's pretty good, he got them both, so you know um but yeah, and little things like just the language, they're talking about glomming, which I hadn't heard that term since I was a kid. You glom onto something, or you're glomming. I think they use it in terms of chips, like stop glomming all the chips. Like, oh my, wow, that's a flashback. Don't scuzz up the floor. Like, yeah, that was that was a good phrase.
this
So
movie is this movie is very, it's not funny in a kitschy way, but it's funny. I hesitate to call this a horror comedy, because when I think of horror comedy, I think of like Evil Dead 2, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, where it's a mixture of horrific kind of like splattery elements, but it's a straight out comedy. This movie, I
right,
think, has a very dark sense of humor, which comes out more in the like the third act than the first two. I'm thinking of Valerie, one of our final girls. This movie has three final girls, is pretty amazing. But
put a pin in
she's
that one.
hmm?
Oh, let's come back to that. But
Oh yeah,
yeah,
but she's in the basement. The killer's upstairs facing off against the coach, and she gets this power drill, the circular saw, and she's like, oh shit, she's gonna go up and really take care of business, and she's running up the stairs, and then of course it's plugged into an extension cord that then I thought for sure that it was gonna, she was gonna fall on the steps and it was gonna like chop her in half or something, but fortunately it just shut down. But going back to Brink Stevens' character's death, when our killer is drilling through the door, I don't know if you caught this, but there's a sign on the door:
yes,
emergency drill procedures.
yeah. There are just little things peppered throughout that if you got your eyes open, like, oh, that that works.
And there's a bit in it, it should not work, but it totally does. Uh there's a knock at the door. This is the moment where most of the people in the house realize there's a killer on the loose. The pizza guy, he's like, it'll be $6, and they're getting their money together. They open the door. The pizza guy falls forward. He's got his eyes have been drilled out. Later, three girls are huddling, with knives, sitting in like a semicircle. The pizza boy's dead body is sitting in front of them, and the one is like, his body's cold, and there's like, is the pizza cold? And she
Right, let's
starts
talk
digging in
about
because
what's important.
right, because they're like, I'm hungry. I think I might get up and get something. Like, well, we got pizza right here. They start eating the
Exactly.
pizza over the corpse.
Yeah, which the other two girls are absolutely mortified by that behavior, and she's like, what, I'm hungry, I'm when I feel bad, I like to eat, and I'm already feeling better. I'm already halfway through a piece of pizza. Yeah.
Right.
I think that character is that Jackie is the character's name, and she's I think some of her lines, subtle, tucked into the background of conversations and stuff, but some good stuff going on.
And I mentioned Valerie, who was in the basement in my previous example, but she is the new girl in town, I guess, or at least at the school. During the initial basketball game, she scores some points, and the other girls in this kind of clique are jealous. And there's a whole thing of like, do we invite her to this party? And she ends up staying home babysitting her younger sister Courtney, but they're across the street, going back to the kind of the Halloween trope of like there's something going on in the house across the street. But they have some, kind of tender moments that the movie takes its time to like have them just sit on the bed, and Valerie's doing Courtney's hair, and they're talking about like, when am I going to be as pretty as you? I want to have your hair. This movie is only like an hour and 14 minutes long, but it feels, not that it feels much longer in a negative way, but it feels more
Right.
substantial than movies that are much longer.
It's nicely filled out. And yeah, there's some good character interaction and character development. I think it's balanced by that. I don't know. I can only describe it as that 80s weirdness, where combined with obvious production issues where we are so spoiled, again, sitting in the time that we're occupying in history. The more child actors that are coming to the screen, they're phenomenal, just absolutely amazing. And you look at something like the original It, and I'll probably be, you know, uh, skewered for saying this, but I think the child actors are so much better in that movie than the adults were, and all those like
Oh
that was
yeah.
John Ritter. I mean, Tim Curry, of course, notwithstanding, he was amazing as Pennywise, but those child actors really made that show, and I honestly don't think that much of that show. But we look at a movie like this, and I don't think it had the budget to deal with child actors and what needed to happen offset in order to work with child actors. Um, and so we've got every female cast member who was naked is mid 20s. I think I went through and looked at and compared ages. The two teenage boys are legitimately teenage boys.
Really?
Yeah, surprise. That's did surprise me because they look older, but they were actually teenagers. But they were playing opposite of this cast of mid 20 year old women who, um, except for the little sister, who doesn't have any nude scenes, so she is a little bit younger. So just watching that, like, we're so spoiled. We're used to kids being kids and just really being kids, doing what kids do. And here we're asked to, like, well, you got to kind of squint on this one a little bit. These are all teenagers. Everybody's the same age. Uh, you know, um,
it it is odd because Courtney, I think that's right, the younger sister, I feel like she was written as being like 12, but she looks like she's 18 or 19. Like she's almost
right.
like in the wardrobe. She's like, oh, she's the younger sister. But they obviously can't have her doing stuff like looking at Playgirl magazine, or doing, or being in kind of this peril. Although I guess they, there are some Tommy Jarvis sort of parallels. Like there's a whole bunch of final chapter stuff from Friday the 13th, especially in the climax of this movie. Especially when one girl gets the machete out or whatever, and she starts, or the kitchen knife, she stabs the killer in the living room, and the coach is like, no, and like grabbing her away. I'm like, that's totally Tommy Jarvis. But back to these actors, it makes sense now that the two male leads, such as they are, no, the heroes, I guess, the doomed boys, not our killer, were actual teenagers acting against 20-year-olds, because there's that scene where they're standing outside the window. This is very early on in the slumber party, and they're like watching these four girls change clothes, get completely naked in the living room. They're watching this through an open window, and they are about as far, I swear, from these girls as I am to my computer screen talking to you.
Right.
Uh, and yet,
Sharing one beer.
sharing one beer, I
Mhm.
I feel like, given this new information that they were teenage boys, I want to bet the director was just like, hey guys, watch this, and she just filmed their honest reactions.
Quite possibly. Yeah, that was a moment where it was the third chunk of nudity. I think the third and final, where it's like, okay, well, it wasn't as uncomfortable as the shower scene for me, because okay, this is the slumber party. This is exactly what I expected to
Mm,
see. Um, Again, given as you described all the promotional material for it, all the stuff that you're going to see um, now of what this film was when it came out, but it didn't have that shower scene was just painful because it, you had characters talking up here off screen while a cameraman,
or camera woman, we don't know.
I'm hoping perhaps that would make me a little less uncomfortable. Not much. The camera just dawdles at like butt height
Yeah,
and just like, oh no, let's go slower pan. And it just,
it is like that scene in Revenge of the Nerds where they get the camera and they're like peeking in on the sorority.
but but that has context. This was just like, here, we just told our camera person to have fun in a room full of naked 20 somethings, and good, there's your movie. I don't know.
It literally is
So,
like, hey guys, eyes up here. But even more than that, and I was paying attention to this because it was almost like a drinking game. Like at what point, because they all start being filmed from the back, to get the full nice butt shot, everything. At what point, how many seconds until they turn around? Oh, I've got to pass you the soap so I can turn around fully, to reach the next stall so you can see everything. And they without fail. But no, but that scene in the living room where they're all changing clothes, I thought it was just hilarious because these guys are literally, the window is open and
right.
they're not whispering. They're
No.
talking about like, oh boy, we're in heaven now, or whatever they're saying. Like, I'm pretty sure they can hear you. And at one
Right.
point, the girl goes, Jackie, I think, goes to flick a cigarette or something out the window, or she had to have seen them.
You'd think that was one of those moments where it's like, all right, this is smacks of 80s, but you know, um, and it makes me that much more curious to know, how do you reimagine this film that was and it has been built in the last 40 years as this is the uh this is more of a female answer to the slasher genre. Um, but again, it still had a lot of those pieces that we have become familiar with of that era. So I'm curious to see what this 2021 reimagining is, and how they approach these different things that have been repeated in three movies. Um, so
Well, I mean, that's the thing is I can understand if you remade it, but did it like a completely faithful adaptation where all you do is update the characters' wardrobes. I mean, I'm talking about like keeping in the nudity, keeping in the showers. You're not going to get that now. I haven't seen the remake, but I can just imagine. Let me get. Is it even rated R? Or is it PG-13? Because
oh, I
like
don't know about rating.
because a lot of these horror remakes are hey, we'll make it a PG-13 movie so we can get as many butts and seats as we can. But this might have been a direct-to-video thing. But no, I mean, there's so much commentary, overt and implicit in here, that you don't need to have like we're gonna say something in 2021 about the slasher genre, because it's all here in 1982. From It's almost like a take on what would be the poster box or the box art that I talked about. There's a scene where the one girl who's going to have sex in the car, she's in the garage. We see her down the ground, like triangularly framed between the killer's legs, she's looking up in terror, and all of a sudden the giant drill dick drops down into frame, and then it starts whirring up. I'm like, I know what you're going for, and I'm on board with it. You know, just that whole like phallic imagery thing. And then at the end, when our guy is being confronted out by the pool, uh, was it Valerie? I think she straight up just chopped his drill in half, like emasculated
Exactly. Yeah.
right at the pool. So it's like, okay, what more can you say about this commentary? It's perfect. It's not in your face. It's there if you want to consider it. But if you just want to like, oh, cool, he got his drill cut in half, it's there for you too.
Sure. And you mentioned three final girls, and I think that that is part of that formula of like, yeah, you might have killed a few of us, Mr. Thorne, but in the end, we're gonna stick together. We're gonna work together. The coach is so concerned about these girls because there was a phone call that takes place that's interrupted when they
It's when the pizza guy shows up because
yes,
she's
thank you.
on one
Thank
girl's
you.
on the phone. All of a sudden, the people at the front of the door start screaming, and she's like, "What's going
Right,
on?" Yeah,
right. When, when Russ Thorne somehow drills out his eyes in between the time it takes for him to say $6 or for the time
I
for
no.
them
That's the
to
thing is,
pull $6 out. You
I
think
think
he said it?
yeah, I that's the impression I got because
Okay.
I didn't think it was going to be an actual pizza guy behind the door. I thought they were just going to open the door thinking it was the pizza guy. It was going to be him standing there with the drill. So I'm pretty sure he killed the guy, like propped his body up, and then did the whole talking through the door thing.
That I like
But
that. That
but
works.
the coach is interesting because she reminded me of the coach from Brian De Palma's Carrie, another film that I think influenced directly or indirectly this movie. You've got the one coach who really cared about Carrie. Unfortunately, during the gym scene, she got chopped in half by the bleacher or whatever. In this movie, she shows up, she really cares, and she's a fighter, and it's a great scene because you can tell she's freaked out and kind of scared, but she's also not going to have any of this nonsense because her girls are in danger. I love the bizarre touch of our Mr. Thorne. He's off to everybody, or so he thinks, and he just pulls up a nice brown blanket and lays down in front of an unlit fireplace with his drill next to him. And he's like,
Right.
I'm gonna take a nap until I'm so rudely interrupted by this coach woman coming into my house.
Right, exactly. And it just again, fascinating character. I just want to know like is this how he lives? Like he just kills people, hangs out for a while. There are beds, but instead he just was that a tarp or was that
I don't know what that. It was just looked
blanket?
like giant. Yeah, it looked like a giant brown, like almost like a weighted blanket. It was huge.
Yeah,
Um,
he just on the floor laid down and like pulled pulled the blanket over him like a little Nosferatu taking a quick nap in Mother Earth, you know?
that's actually a great analogy. Um, I do want there's one more bit of filmmaking business I want to talk about that I think sets this movie apart. It's when Valerie's at home watching a horror movie, some kind of a slash. I don't know what the movie was that she was watching, that black and white thing. Do you know what that
Oh,
was?
I almost looked it up. I kind of wondered if that was a production, a mini production for the film.
Or I was also wondering if it might have been was it Amy Holden's, like one of her previous films or something, as like an Easter egg. But one of the guys that had been attacked, he's running to the door and like banging on the door, but she's got the TV turned up so loudly that she can barely hear him. So she thinks it might just be the movie. And then we get this great cross cut between the killer in the movie like chasing, attacking and stabbing the person in the film, the victim in the film, and then outside, this guy gets caught up with our driller killer. There's a struggle on the lawn. She even gets up because she hears something. She goes and looks outside the door, but the window is so small that she can't see that it's happening just off to the side. And this tragic kid getting stabbed to death horribly and intercut with this horror movie. I don't know what it says or what it means, but it feels momentous.
Yeah, it's a nice piece of editing happening there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I could probably talk for another hour and a half about this movie because it's so fascinating to me, but we've got other things to discuss. Chad, what are your final thoughts on Slumber Party Massacre? Or are there things that you'd like to touch on that we haven't?
Uh, no, I've been pretty vocal about yeah, I don't want to spoil anything for the sequels because, it hasn't been quite fully 40 years for each of those. You still have another few years respectively. So um but worth a watch. Um and I think as much as I've found the killer fascinating and a little bit um I completely understand where you're coming from, and like being able to see obviously just a typical human being who lacks any empathy, a true uh someone who just is not present is terrifying. I just couldn't, something about the look of this particular killer, I just couldn't find that when people are screaming and running from them, like, I don't know, like, you would maybe talk to him first, or try and get something out of him. But what I find interesting actually occurs in the third film, I want to say. I think the second film almost kind of pokes fun at this killer, at Russ Thorne of Slumber Party Massacre, the original. But then by the third installment, um, it the whole film takes an interesting take, which I kind of questioned as I was watching the original.
Hmm.
So yeah. Um, mhm.
There is one last thing I want to bring up because as you were talking, remember something we were talking about earlier. Um, all the guys in this movie are, horny or creepy. The one boyfriend, the guy who was beheaded, and I guess it was left as sort of a trap rolled out into his lap. There's a scene where the girl, and I can't remember her name. I remember the names of these characters, but I don't remember who
I think
goes
it was
with which name.
Diana,
Was it
I believe,
Diane? The
or
one that
Diane. Yeah.
the one with the red and white striped kind of shirt. She goes into the house to let the friends know that she and her friend are going to go off to buy beer, i.e., she's going to rub his six pack. Uh, as the guy is watching her go into get out of the car and go into the house, he turns his head slowly, and there's such a look of like leering, almost malevolence that I was kind of glad he was dead because that's the look of if things don't go the way that he wants them to, I feel like they're going to go too far.
Right. He's gonna make things happen.
Yeah. And
Whether
it was a scary look. I almost wondered like, okay, do we have two psychos in this movie? What's going on?
Well, I mean, when you take the neighbor into account, um,
Mr. Contant?
yeah, like he is one of the freakiest characters to me, because that is someone like our driller killer. Every 15 minutes, with as a character is turning on a TV or the radio's on in the background, it's in the newspaper, we're getting information that, like, hey, there's a crazy killer out there. um I'd be interested to know if the drill was his thing for the original five that he was found out for, or if it was a different weapon. But um that that's a stranger, and at least on that level I can empathize with, like, hey, there is a killer loose, and this guy is a stranger, so stranger danger there. The neighbor, like and there was an exchange with the parents where this girl has just turned 18. The parents are going off for something, and classic 80s type, like, we're running out the door, honey, we gotta go, like right now. Mom's still talking, like, okay, you're gonna be okay, don't turn the oven on, lock the doors, that type of stuff. And the parents saying, we are putting our trust in this apparently single mid 40s, late 30s male neighbor who is creepy right in front of their car, like, oh, I'll take care of her, all right. Just like horrifying. I think that was one of the biggest messages I took from it. And I wouldn't even call them echoes, I would call them um trumpets of the same character in future films.
Oh.
But that character, you might wonder, like, okay, is this guy this creepy just so we can have those feints, those moments of like of misdirection, and somebody's coming down the stairs and we only see a shadow, and Valerie um is home alone and like starts running for the door. It's locked. She's having a hard time getting it. Hand comes out. Oh, it's not the killer. It's the neighbor in her house upstairs. What the fuck? Like, no, there's no part of that that is okay. And maybe at some, like, societally, I don't know. I don't know if that was, intended to be a statement of like, well, she's 18. Like, there is never a reason for an adult to be uninvited adult to be in a house or to be in a situation with someone that young. And it I was very happy when that character was killed.
See,
um
I I didn't pick up those creepy vibes from the neighbor as strongly as you got them, mostly because I was still trying to figure out how old he was supposed to be. Like there's the bit where, like, I think it's when the parents are leaving the house, he's like sitting at the counter in the kitchen and he looked like it was the wardrobe and the hair. I was like, okay, is this a 40-year-old guy that they're trying to make like he's like 14? Is this the younger brother? Oh no, this is the creepy neighbor. I couldn't quite take him seriously. Plus, he has this weird fetish about killing snails. I don't know what was going on with him.
is
Um,
Yeah, a bizarre character all around, but super cringy. And yeah, but that is where, watching the film for the first time, I was going, why is this character so obviously creepy? I mean, it stands out to me. Like, if I hadn't seen the face of the killer in the first 10 minutes, 5 minutes actually, I think, um I would be wondering, is this guy the killer? I think this guy could be the killer, because, and I think that was kind of my ultimate reaction to the film, is like, oh, it was good. It was interesting, fascinating on so many levels, tried some new things. Definitely, like, just smaller statured, denim clad killer wandering around with a drill. That's super novel. Um, but we missed kind of the mystery of like, but who is it? It's like, well, I know who it is. So this creepy neighbor, I know that's not the killer. Why the hell is he so freaking creepy? Is it just so that I do celebrate when he's killed? Like, oh, good. The pedophile from next door just,
they could have done something with this because, yeah, he's creepy, but and you wonder how the parents could trust him with their kids unless they didn't literally know anybody else on the block. But I almost get this feeling like maybe they saw him in a different kind of an adult way. The movie doesn't
right.
flesh this out, but I think in a different story or a different angle, it could have worked, where the teenage girls see him as this creepy old man kind of pervert, whereas the adults, they just see him as like, oh, he's just, Jim from next door or whatever.
Right.
Just like perception versus reality. He's not actually a creep. It's just that they think there's just something weird because he's an adult and he's single.
Absolutely. And I think that's the genius of having that character be so obviously creepy. It's that fourth wall we're sitting on the other side of, going like, no, you don't trust somebody like that. But in reality, so many people do. And that's the real scary part of life for me, is, know who you're trusting. No, and if your kids come to you and go, that is a creepy person, you don't go, oh, that's just Mr. Content from next door, he just likes to come over and hang out in our bedroom while we're not here and have coffee downstairs with their 18-year-old daughter at 10:30 at night.
I swear that was probably his brown blanket, because it's creepy and weird, doesn't make any sense.
Probably brought it over, sure.
Yeah. I think that was a different house actually, but it's still it was his blanket. That's the story I'm going with. Chad, we're gonna it's dawn. The Slumber Party Massacre is over. So we're gonna transition to poems of grave importance.
All right.
The Kickstarter project that you are producing, that I backed today, that is like, let me refresh my screen here. No one else can see this, but I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I haven't taken a look either.
Let me see. Okay, you're at 6104 of a $6,500 goal. You've got 11 days to go as of this recording, so it's gonna be more like 10. So tell us, why should people, what is / are the poems of grave importance? Why should people back your project?
Let's start there. So, much as it sounds, Poems of Grave Importance is a book of macabre, kind of quirky, think Edward Gorey style, maybe not that high of a literary peak, but just fun Halloween horror, murderous macabre poems that have been written, and we've got accompanying illustrations from some just amazing artists who have contributed. And we've got, like, for instance, Mitch O'Connell, who is like pop artist king. If you don't know who he is, just put his name into Google and you're going to get back thousands of amazing images. Jeff Carlson is an artist who illustrated our author. We have a ghostwriter whose name is Ridley Mortis, and he is a Reaper sort. And we have some rare photos of him hanging out writing his poetry in a graveyard. But Jeff Carlson actually drew him up, and then I got to animate him for some of our promotional materials, so that was fun. We have Jeff Lasseter and Travis Falligant from IB Trav, and Hillary Barta, who is a comic artist.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Rosita Perez, we've got Teresa Simons, Anthony J. Lombardini, and Angela Grant, and more. So a lot of artists that we're just trying to get exposure for these artists. Not that most of them need this exposure, but just, wonderful illustrations to accompany these fun poems. And we're going to have a paperback edition of poems. We're going to have a hardback. We've got a ton of reward tiers that center around poems, obviously, but we've also got some really fun celebrity greats, some horror legends that have said, "Oh, we want to see this happen." They've contributed readings of these poems, which we have, or in all honesty, they have captured themselves, since a lot of this was happening towards the tail end of COVID. But they've done some very fun dramatic readings of the poems, and that those are now part of our rewards. And Brink Stevens, as we mentioned, Linda in Slumber Party Massacre, she was the first uh, teenager of the group that got killed, and surprisingly nobody inquired about her after she died in the film, come to think of it. But and then Ari Lehman, who was Jason in the first Friday the 13th, the very end there, and also of the first Jason, the metal. Oh, I'm sorry, Ari, I don't want to get this wrong. I'm going to call it dark metal band
Yeah.
that he's put together. And weirdest of all coincidences, I was in Kansas City and found out that he was performing like 6 blocks away. So I went there. I was like, "You're a Chicago guy. Do you do this often? Do you tour?" It was like, "Yeah, I'll take it out and tour with First Jasons." And like, it was really cool. It was very cool. He headlined a whole metal night, and it was a lot of fun. Gary Sherman, also producer, director, Dead and Buried, Poltergeist 3. Lynn Lowry from not just the first Crazies, but I found out recently she also, they gave her a cameo in the updated The Crazies, as well as The Shivers and 130 plus other films that she's been in. We have up and coming Scream Queen Lydia Manson. She's a horror vlogger and just an all around spooky ghoul. She's contributed a reading as well. And then Deborah DeLiso, who was Kim in Slumber Party Massacre. She has also uh, come in and said, "Hey, I want to do a reading too." So we have 2 Slumber Party Massacre celebrities who have done readings, and they're helping us promote poems of grave importance. So,
And these are like MP4s or like videos or something, or tell us about it.
yeah, they're going to be MP4, or excuse me, technically, yeah, they will be MP4s on the file format side, but they'll be video format. And as far as our rewards, that's the part of producing a Kickstarter that I absolutely adore. I love putting together tiers of cool stuff that people can look at and go, "Yeah, I would. This is cool." I will help you out, help you make a project, and then once we get the project done, we're like, "Cool, now we get to share it with you." One of the staples in my Kickstarting producing is, as much as possible, I try and make the tiers cumulative so that I believe you pitched in at coffin stuffer level,
Yes.
and that means you get the paperback book, but it's not just the paperback book. You get the paperback book plus everything else in that tier, which is bookmarks, some
Book
book
plates.
plates, yeah, customizable book plates, and you also get everything up to that point, which includes the digital copy of the book, so you can read it on your phone, read it on a laptop. Um, Also the readings, and Mitch O'Connell has created some art for the campaign, and we're going to turn those into some personalized screen savers, wallpapers. So yeah, we've got some cool stuff. The coffin stuffer tier is neck and neck with the hardcore horror fiend tier, and in that one, it's actually bumped up a couple from coffin stuffer. It's usually uh, the $50 and $70 levels are usually the most popular, but in this one, our our next tier up, the hardcore horror fiend tier, that one is just going gangbusters. You get the hardback book, a T-shirt, a tote bag, an additional paperback copy, so you'll get 2 copies, so you can keep one, give one away, give both away, but read it first. And then we've got a tier just up a little bit from that where you actually get your name on the back of the t-shirt, and everybody in the campaign that is at the t-shirt level, everybody's that those t-shirts are going to have those people's names on them. We're looking at those as, you know, you're part of a club, you're touring with us, you're helping out Ridley, and so yeah, try to make it as fun as possible while getting this book published.
So how many pages is it?
It's that's the thing. It kind of keeps growing as far as, you know, the more poems that Ridley Mortis is writing, we're going to cap it around 100. So it's not going to be a 300-page tome, but it's not going to be a little leaflet either. It's going to be a nice, healthy, around 100 pages.
Yeah, and the cool thing is there's you can get add-ons for a lot of these tiers that include a physical book, either paperback or hardcover, where you can actually have it signed by some of the creative team, which is pretty exciting. Yeah,
and just to be explicit on that, if even though it's spelled out, you know, it's easy to read in some confusion there. My apologies on that if anybody is confused by that, but that add-on you're getting, if you're already at, say, the coffin stuffer level where you're getting a book as you did, you can pick up that add-on and have it signed by both Ridley Mortis, our mystical mystery ghostwriter of grim things, as well as our pop artist Mitch O'Connell.
Yeah, it's cool. I've seen some of Mitch's work around Chicago, especially like the Music Box of Horrors kind of events that, you know, he's done some great pop posters there. I love his stuff. So yeah, it's very exciting. I'm excited for you. This campaign is so close that I'm really hoping that not only it gets to the finish line so it can be fulfilled, because that's the kind of Kickstarter rules. It has to meet the minimum, but then it can go beyond. I mean, are there any like stretch goals or anything, like if you exceed? Yeah, tell us about those.
And we're getting close to where we're going to release our stretch goals. We didn't want to be too presumptuous. We wanted to make sure we were around 95% funded. So in the next few days, we're going to be releasing some ideas for stretch goals, and it's pretty typical on a Kickstarter campaign. Towards the end, we're sitting just kind of late middle right now. But as we get closer to the end of the campaign, within 5 days or so, excitement seems to pick up. A lot of people like to wait, see what's left. We do have a lot of limited edition pieces. We have some John Waters posters of John Waters art that have been signed by John Waters. We've got some things signed by Larry Cohen.
You got some Jim Jarmusch bookmarks, which is pretty incredible.
Yes. If the U.S. government is listening, you didn't hear this from me. No one ever said this. Static all around. But those are U.S. dollar bills that have been converted into art and signed by Jim Jarmusch. And who else do we have up there? You're looking at it, right? I'm not. I should be.
Oh, now I got to scroll, man.
Yeah, let me pop down here. Let me do my homework. There we go. And these are add-ons too. Joe Dante, who directed Gremlins and so many other things. But these two, we have 6 total, 4 of Jim Jarmusch's bookmarks, and only 2 of the Joe Dante bookmarks. Those add-ons, if you're not aware, you commit to a tier and then you're free to add on whatever you like there. So that's how add-ons work. Some other really cool things like Ridley's creature feature. It's designed for somebody with, you know, uh, definitely the means to further their horror collection. But we only have 3 sets of these, but you get all of these. You get a headshot of Tippi Hedren from The Birds with a bird autographed. Larry Cohen amongst some of his creations, Carlson from Night of the Living Dead, and Julie Adams. 2 different, one Creature from the Black Lagoon poster, and then one that's more of a production still, both signed by her. Um, we've got a Romero zombie tier that is 4 of the films signed by different actors. Um, just just a lot of cool stuff. The stuff that really excites me is um, I I love that T-shirt. I love that you can, you know, I've had a couple of friends go, so my name's going to be on there, like, and other people are going to get this. Like, yeah, that's how it works. We've had somebody sign up for our Dark Architect, a limited tier where you're an executive producer. We're going to put your name in front of the book as as a producer for our book, for, you know, helping out, and try to make these as low price as possible, um, and just, you know, let everybody have some fun, get some Halloween gifts early. We'll be distributing these, if we're successful. Somewhere I would like to put them out in September, but given that we're, you know, the world's still seeing some odd supply fulfillment from COVID effects, we're not promising anything until October, but as
That's
soon as we get things done.
well, that's nice because some campaigns it's like, okay, it's fulfilled, you've paid your money, and you'll get your thing in a year. You
Right.
guys are,
But
you seem like
yeah,
you're really on it.
it happens. But yeah, if we had another 2 hours, I would show you my in-depth spreadsheets that have, you know, not only like here's where we're going to get this produced, but here's 3 alternates, here's all
Well,
the pricing, here's how it all pans out. So
that
um
is what YouTube was made for, is Excel tutorials. So, exciting stuff. No,
it's fascinating to some, but not most.
yeah.
So
Well, thanks, man. Anything else you wanted to say about the campaign?
just pop over and take a look. That's all I ask. You know, look through, see if there's something that you would like for yourself, or again, this will be coming out in time where you can gift things for Halloween if you're that kind of person. I certainly am. Halloween gifts as much as Christmas, but if you want to get ahead on your Christmas shopping, and you know those people that are into horror, goth stuff, um, Halloween, just dark arts in general, people that enjoy quirky little poems about murders of crows and things like that. So yeah,
Awesome. Well, yeah, and if you are getting for Christmas, you can get the coffin stuffer because it makes a great stocking stuffer.
there you go.
Um, but no, man, thank you. And for folks out there who are interested in poems of grave importance, go check out the link below. It goes right to the Kickstarter campaign. And please, whatever level you are moved to support at, they've got tiers ranging from a few bucks to what, like several hundred, I think, right? For the mega tiers, right?
Right, right.
So yeah, every little bit helps, and this is looks like it's gonna be a really cool project once the book is done and out in the world. So thank you, Chad, for talking about this project and also Slumber Party Massacre. I was thrilled to discover another classic horror movie that I was not at all familiar with, and I ended up just like loving.
There you go. It's yeah, and with the amount of horror that continues to be put out, with the entry to, or the barrier to entry, excuse me, just being stripped away in our day and age, there's such a backlog that's just being added to. I mean, you can never catch up on good horror. So
Yeah.
let's do it again, I think is what I'm saying. That was fun.
Yes, we will definitely have to talk more movies, but we're not going to wait for the anniversary of Slumber Party Massacre 2. We'll find something else to talk about.
All right.
All right, sir. Chad Hawks, The Crypt Kicker. Everybody check out Poems of Grave Importance on Kickstarter. Again, links down below. Thank you so much, sir, and we will catch you later. And I hope things are going well in that attic. I'm a little concerned.
Oh, it's appropriately spooky. I'm right at home. So Ian, thank you for having me. Thank you for reaching out. It's been fantastic.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.
All right. Bye.